All right, we're going to take a look today at setting up FileMaker starting point with QuickBooks Online. So to start with, we have a completely clean copy of FileMaker starting point. Go ahead and move this over here. FileMaker starting point 7 has some different layout options when you open it up, and the option we're going to choose is the advanced, and we're actually going to change this again once we get in, and that's because some of the options that we are going to want for the layouts are specific to QuickBooks. So we'll go ahead and take care of that first. We'll go to the navigation tab, and that option that you chose, set this here, and we're actually going to change that to QuickBooks. And we'll go ahead and go to QuickBooks, and this is where we're going to start setting all of our initial settings to get our QuickBooks Sync operational. But we'll go ahead and take a pause real quick and hop over to QuickBooks Online. So this is set up in the QuickBooks Sandbox, and we have a completely brand new company here. The only thing that's been set is the company name. And what we're going to go ahead and do is there's some initial settings that should be set here online in order to have the sync operate properly according to the business logic that we set up in FileMaker starting point. So coming over to company settings, we'll go over to the sales tab, and we're going to toggle a few of these settings from off to on. One of them is going to be turn shipping on. This is going to allow us to have a shipping amount field show up on our invoices. We're going to turn discount on, so we can have a discount on invoices and deposit. And we'll save that. While I'm in this setting, I'm going to go ahead and hop back over to the company tab. And if I wanted to, I would go ahead and change the label of whatever I call my customers. For me, I'm going to leave it as customers, but if there was another choice here that would be more applicable, you could set that and hit save. And now I'm going to go and leave settings, and I'm going to come over to accounting. And I'm looking at the accounts that I currently have. We are going to be setting and linking some of these accounts to various parts of our sync. Products, for example, that we will be syncing, they need to be synced with an asset account, an expense account, and an income account. And if I hop over and glance back at the preferences here, you can see these first three accounts are accounts that we're going to be syncing, and these have to do with products. Discount really goes into invoices, but if you have a discount, you need to have that specified and synced to an account, and the same with invoices. So I'm just going to make some notes here about these account names, because that's what's going to show up in the drop-down list for me when I hop back over to the database. So I'm just going to look through here, and the ones that I'm looking for, first off, for asset account, we're looking for this one of other current assets. That's the category that we're looking for, and you can see that right now that's called an uncategorized asset is probably the one that I'm going to go with. And if I wanted to, I could edit this. I could edit the name, and so let's just call this asset account for products. I don't have to change this name, but I can. And let's go ahead and look at some of the other ones while we're here. One of the other ones is expense account, and the only thing that has to be of type cost of goods sold. So we're going to go ahead and add that in. Depending on your QuickBooks account selection and the subscription you chose, the default accounts can vary. But let's go ahead and set this up. And according to the API guide, we have to have an account type of cost of goods sold. So let's do that. And we're going to name under detail, supplies and materials, and we're just going to put this as cost of goods sold. And I'm just going to indicate that this is going to products. If you're doing this for an existing customer, you're probably going to have to be working with existing accounts, and you may have to make adjustments to have all this work correctly. QuickBooks is very specific on some of these as to the type of account and sometimes even the subtype. The other one for products is we need to have an account with sale of product income as the type. So let's look through here. Sales of product income right here. It's called sales. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to go ahead and make a quick adjustment here to that name just so no confusion when I get into FileMaker and I'm linking this up. All right. Also, I need kind of my primary bank set up, and I have basically for invoices, all of those payments are going to be dumped into one account, and I need that according to the documentation. I need for QuickBooks, I need that account type to be either other current asset or bank. So let's go ahead and just create a new one, bank. And we'll just say it's a checking account, and we'll just call it Wells Fargo Business. The last one that we need to have set up is for discounts, and that one's already here. It's pretty straightforward. That's the one we're going to use as discounts right there. So those are the 5 accounts we need to make note of, and those are the 5 accounts we're going to be syncing up here in just a few minutes. But we are done with that part. Let's go ahead and head over to our next part, and that's going to be really getting our taxes set up. I'm going to come over to taxes, and I'm going to say I want to set up sales tax, and I got to get my business address set up. So I'll use our Santa Clara office here. And do we need to collect out sales tax outside of California? I'd say no. All right, they're going to automatically set my tax agency up, and it tells me I'm good to go. Well, I'm going to kind of dive into this a little bit and show you what this would look like. So if I go to taxes, let's go ahead and add the filing frequency, and we'll say we file yearly. So what I'm going to see under taxes, if I go to sales tax settings, let me do that again a little bit slower. Taxes. Here I am. You can see I have an agency set up, but sales tax settings, and we're collecting in California. And if for some reason we needed to add another agency, let's say we needed to add an agency. We have an office in Texas, so let's go ahead and select Texas and choose yearly, and we will choose a start date. The start date would really probably need to go back to as early as the invoices you're syncing, but if they've already reported taxes for the previous year and they file yearly, you probably would just want to backdate this to, if they file yearly on whenever that is, you would just backdate that to whenever you need to start recording taxes so that all gets collected and recorded properly. All right, so now we have our sales tax set up, and we have our account set up. We have pretty much everything. The other thing we need to do while we're here is we need to go to Settings, All List, and Terms. And this may not need to change, but if you have other terms that you need to set up, let's just go ahead and say maybe you have one that is 5 or something, or even maybe payments up front. Whatever it is you need to have set up, you can put that in here, and that term is going to display in a drop-down list on the invoice, and that is a requirement. You have to have terms selected before you can push an invoice up to QuickBooks, but we'll talk more about all those requirements in a few minutes. So we're pretty much done on the website here, and we are going to now move over from here over to FileMaker. And we're just going to start here on step 1. And I'm going to talk a little bit about these first 3 options, but I really want to delve into kind of getting this plugin configured, getting it registered, and so on. As you can see here with the Use QuickBooks, this is an option used internally. It just shows certain things and has certain things display on the layouts, and it's used in certain calculations and scripts. So this just needs to be turned to yes if you are using QuickBooks. Collecting sales tax. If you are collecting sales tax, what is going to happen if you turn this to no? Your line items that can be flagged as taxable will not be flagged as taxable, even if you have sales tax set up on QuickBooks Online. If you're not sure if you're going to collect sales tax, if you're required to, you can leave this to yes. The sales tax will not be charged if you do not have that sales tax set up here. So if you just want to have all of it report from FileMaker and then just let QuickBooks deal with it, you can do that by just having that default to yes. And then allow payments. This one is kind of something that more than likely will be set as an initial setting. FileMaker starting point has the ability in invoices, and we'll just kind of hop over there. In invoices, you can have you can record payments, and you can come down here to partial payments, and you can add partial payments in for an invoice. And if you want to be able to have people collect these partial payments, you can leave that as yes, but the recommended way we're proposing people do this is the payments are initially pushed because you have been recording them in FileMaker before, and now you're going to be managing this in QuickBooks. Anything having to do with the collection of money should be handled on the QuickBooks side by the accounting department. For your sales team, they're using FileMaker, they're generating invoices, they're maybe putting in deposits and they're recording these line items. They're doing all this stuff here, but once an invoice gets pushed up, then the payments would be recorded on the QuickBooks side and not in here. But this option of being able to have part payments sent up to available here on the layout, and then in turn sent up to QuickBooks Online, that's probably going to be something you're going to have set initially, and then you will probably want to have that turned off once you have moved past the initial sync where you've dumped maybe a huge chunk of invoices up, and now everything is as it should be. We have everything in place on both ends, and you have all your old payments pushed up, and but that's something there. All right, so now I already have the QuickBooks plugin installed, and I know that because I can see under plugin version I have the FMBooks connector online and the version number. If I wanted to, though, I could hit the install plugin button. That would automatically try to install the plugin for me. It will detect the operating system and the version of the operating system that you're on. The plugin file is stored in the container field here in preferences, and then based on your operating system that gets installed. And so you will get basically this box here for some of the operations like the register and the begin session and the pre-flight check. The feedback that you will receive, whether there's a problem or whether it was successful, will show up in this box right here. So I've installed the plugin, and now I am going to take my license ID and I'm going to insert my license ID into this field right here. And then I'm going to hit the Register QuickBooks Plugin button. And now that I've done that, I can see that my plugin has been registered successfully. And so that is looking good so far. I've moved and now I've kind of completed step 1, and let's move on to step 2. So now that I have this connection ready to go, I've had my license info for my productive computing plugin, their QuickBooks connector. I'm now going to step 2. And there's a couple things I'm going to choose before I try to begin a session. And mainly that's just this option here. Am I connecting to a live QuickBooks Online account, or am I using one that I've set up in the sandbox? For me, this one is set up in their sandbox, and more than likely it would probably be good that you initially maybe test it in a sandbox and then integrate with your live, especially if you have an existing QuickBooks Online account that may have other things already up there and you're now going to try to push your data from FileMaker. You definitely do not want to make a mistake and have something not recorded properly. So you choose your mode, and now I'm ready to begin my session. So when I hit begin session, this is going to be slightly different on a Windows computer versus a Mac. On Windows, this would open in a more traditional browser. On a Mac, it opens kind of in this kind of pop-up window. Okay, I'm going to sign in, and it's going to ask me with my sandbox. It's asking me, and it would ask me what company I want to sync it to. And I have 2 set up, but the one I want to use is this blank one I have called FMSP Company. I'm going to select that. It prompts me, asking me the will to authorize the QuickBooks to talk to the FM QuickBooks Online plugin, and I'm going to allow that and hit connect. Now, if I was on a Windows machine right now, I would have received a code, and I would have a popover box that would ask me to insert that code. And once I inserted that, that would actually show up here, and that would be part of the Windows authentication. But with the Mac, it's a little bit more streamlined, and that just inserts directly in. So I believe I'm good to go, but I'm going to go ahead and run pre-flight check and see what it tells me. And it tells me success. It tells me the session's loaded. It tells me the next time it's going to refresh is about 6 months from now. Was that right? 5? Anyway, sometime in the future here, but that looks good. All right, so now that I've done that, I'm ready to go ahead and move on to step 3. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to hit this sync button. And what that's going to do for us is that's going to refresh the values that are going to show up in these drop-down buttons. And that's going to give us the list of all of our accounts. So I hit that. And now I can move down and select the different accounts. And we've already kind of marked most of these that we needed. We know that if I go back to we need to select our income account, and I'm going to scroll down to the one that we set up, sales of product income. And I'm going to go to my expense account. And that one needed to be cost of goods sold for products. And my asset account for products, my discounts, and then I need my bank. All right, the last thing that I need to set here is the QuickBooks Customer Sync option. We could change the label, but by default the label for QuickBooks customers or accounts is the customer label. They had some other ones we could have set, but internally in here we have accounts and contacts, and you have to decide where you want what you see in the customer section on QuickBooks, where do you want that to pull from. I'm going to go ahead and just leave that on contacts. If I look down here at the bottom, I have some synchronization options. I can do a sync all, I can sync these individual items, but we're going to actually run some of these syncs directly from the layouts initially, and I'll come back here to review this part of it. So there's actually a specific order that we should go in and getting all this stuff synced. And the first part of that is we are going to go to products. And I have one product here. And what you'll notice is for this QuickBooks product, I have just kind of a gray circle here. And if I click on this, I can see that I do not have any of these values here. And these values are specific. Once a product gets synced up, it returns all of this data to let me know the sync ID and so on. And I'm going to go ahead and just sync the current product. And I have a validation problem. So that's good. And it's actually letting me know that I selected the wrong account type. So for the inventory product, the inventory asset account must have account type other current asset and detail type inventory. So let's go ahead and check that out. Let's go to accounting, other current asset, inventory asset. So this is the one we should have been using, and I apologize for that. And we will change that. So let's go over to our settings. And let's go to asset account, inventory asset. And let's go back to products. And we'll go to QuickBooks and let's try it now, sync current product. All right, so the error message goes away. I have a sync ID, and the sync ID is the unique number given me by QuickBooks. I have a sync token, which kind of is like a revision count. As it gets modified, that number would go up. And I have the timestamp of the last sync, and then I have a mod count. And the mod count is something internal to FileMaker that will tell you when the record gets modified. If I run this QuickBooks sync again and I sync the current product, it actually will it'll go really fast because it actually will not do a sync because the record has not been modified. So if I hit sync again, you can see that my sync token didn't change, my mod count didn't change. But if I were to come in and change this to a different name, you can see, and now I run my sync current product, you can see it actually detected that the mod count had been adjusted. And so now you can see that it pushed up the new values, and now I have a sync token of 1. My mod count at the last sync is now 19. So that is the product sync, which we are going to do are basically 3 primary syncs, and we're going to do them in the order of products and then customers. Now we selected that our customers should pull from accounts, so that is where we are going to go. And right now I have one account in here, and I'm going to go ahead and change this address to another address just because I want the sales tax to calculate, and since that is our business address, that won't work. So we'll just pick a random residential address in the area, and we will change the shipping address to that as well. And so we have that ready to go. We're going to go to QuickBooks and we're going to sync the current account. And that pushed up successfully. The amount due comes down with this. There's a couple things that happen with a customer sync that vary from products. Products is we're just pushing data up to QuickBooks, but customers is slightly different. Customers we are going to push up there, but the thing is, because invoices are going to be related to our customers, we want to get back the amount due. And that's really, it's kind of redundant because we are going to sync our invoices as well, and we'll get an amount due on every invoice, but this will get us a kind of this is the amount due for customers, an accurate number of that. And then also there's some fields here because we're doing two different types of syncs. There's not one error field, but there is two. We could get an error when we're pushing data up, and we could get an error when we're trying to pull back data. So we have both of those here, and it has synced successfully, which is great. All right. So now that we have this and we have our green check here, and so we've synced our products and we've synced our accounts, now we're going to move over to invoices. Now the Invoices Sync is fairly involved. The first thing we're going to do though, and especially if you have current invoices that you need to push up, realize that more than likely you are going to have existing terms that were just inserted as text, and now you're going to have to change those to a term ID. If I hit this little kind of refresh icon here, you can see it refreshes the term IDs, and I can select one. What you may want it to do if you're doing a lot of backdating is you may want to do a find for all of your items that are net 30 and replace those with the new net 30 value from the drop down, and do that for all the different types of terms you have for your invoices before you push them up. I've selected net 30, and you can see that this particular invoice is marked as paid. It's linked over to our account, and there's a few checks that are going to happen when we perform the sync on this invoice. One, it's going to make sure do we have a term. Two, it's going to make sure are we linked to an account, and has that account been synchronized with QuickBooks. It's also going to be doing a few other checks to make sure do we have at least one line item here. A few things that it's also going to look for. It's going to look for a deposit value if there is one. It's going to look for a discount amount, and then it will also eventually after that look for, are there any partial payments? Is it marked paid? Do we need to record any payments? So about that, if you say you didn't record any partial payments and you just mark an invoice as paid when it's paid, and that's the only indication that it's paid, that's not a problem. What it will do when it pushes up is it will create a payment for the full amount due, and it'll push that up if you have it marked as paid, or if you only have partial payments, it'll push up the partial payments and it'll update the amount due. The one thing that does happen in here, we do have the ability for FileMaker Starting Point to calculate sales tax, but sales tax has, there's a lot of complexities to sales tax that move beyond kind of a simple rate, because for instance, even in California, the rate will change by city and by county and so on. So to have one particular rate is not necessarily really feasible. You're going to have multiple rates. And instead of trying to understand the complexities and have FileMaker try to calculate all that, QuickBooks is the authority. We'll let them deal with that. So what happens is when we push this invoice up, you can see that I've marked this as this is a taxable item. We are collecting sales tax as we marked over in preferences, and we set up our sales tax agency as California, and this is shipping and billing to California. So we are going to get back a sales tax amount from QuickBooks. And all right, so we are going to go ahead. We have everything set. Let's go under shipping info, and I'm going to go ahead and put shipping cost on here. One of the things that we have currently flagged as part of our sync is that we do not apply the sales tax on the shipping cost, but there are some states that require that, and again, we let QuickBooks kind of deal with that. But if for some reason you have some discrepancies where you're looking at the sales tax rate and you're looking at the amount of products you have and you don't understand why the sales tax that QuickBooks is calculating is higher, that could be why. Some states require that happen. All right, so we're going to go ahead and sync the current invoice. All right, and we successfully synced that invoice up to QuickBooks. If I come here, I can see that it was synced, and I have a sync ID, I have my sync token, and so on. One thing I want to note here is at the very bottom, you can see that the record has been synced with QuickBooks Online, and it is now locked. And there is an unlock button, but we'll get back to that in just a minute. You can see that I had this one marked as paid. QuickBooks doesn't let you send up just the status of paid, and we mentioned that it's going to actually record a payment. So let's take a look at that. All right. You can see that if I go to all my sales, I can see that I have an invoice. If I open up that invoice number, I can see invoice 001, customer Richard Carlton Consulting. I can see the due date. I can see the total, and I can see that it was paid because it also recorded a payment. And it gave me the payment amount. The payment date that comes through is just the current date that it syncs. All right, so now I can go look at those invoice details. Let's go ahead and just take a look at that. You can see this is already selected because we have that syncing, but it is wanting to know that. So I'm just going to say, yep, that's where it should go. I hit save. All right, let's take a look at the sales tax. I wanted to look at that. You can see sales tax of $2.97, and I'm just going to click on to see how that was calculated. I have the state tax of 6.25, the county tax of 1%, and the city or the district of 1.75. And that was calculated on the Angular clamp. All right. Good. I've got my shipping amount of $5 that we set. And all right, good. Let's go ahead and exit out of here. And we don't need to save. We didn't make any changes. Sure. Let's come back here, and I want to show you that, all right, some options disappeared when we made the sync. One, the sales tax rate pulled through. Now we have $297. I can see partial payments is no longer available. I can't make any changes to any of these fields. If I try to make a change, say I want to add a product. Well, I can't add anything or add a line item because it's already been synced. And the same if I go to remove. It's been synced. It's not going to let me make any changes here. I could also try changing the shipping amount. It's not going to let me change the shipping amount. None of those options are changeable because this invoice has been synced. Now, let's say let's go ahead and we'll create a new invoice here. And I'm going to mark it as preliminary. And I'm going to set my terms. And I'm going to add a product. Okay. And I'm going to link it up with an account. And I'm not going to worry about shipping. Say we had free shipping this time. So shipping cost of 0. Got my billing address and shipping address ready to go, which is great. Now that that's done, let's go ahead and try a different sync. So I've got my synchronization here, and I've got this sync. But let's say this time we're not going to hit the button to sync all of our invoices individually. That would just take way too much time. Let's say we want to go ahead and use the sync all options. Now I have these here, but it's probably not a good idea to have everyone going to preferences all the time. There's a lot of things in here that would not be great to change. So we have kind of a little quick access module here, popover window. And this is going to give me my sync all options. And I have kind of a sync all customers and sync all products. So let's go ahead and run these here, sync products. So that's going to sync all my products. And yep, it's good to go. Let's go ahead and sync all customers. And we're going to do all records. Great, no errors. If I had an error, it would let me know. And I'm going to sync all of my invoices. All right, wonderful. I just synced everything. But let's go ahead and we'll take a look now. We have sync, no errors, which is wonderful. We could view errors if we had errors. But let's go back to, so we're done, and we go back to invoices, and we come back to this sync, and I can see that, all right, I told it to sync everything, but this didn't sync. So why is that? And the reason for that is we have this status automatically when is entered the preliminary. And the preliminary status really means, okay, so I created an invoice here and I'm working on this invoice, but it's not ready to go. I don't want it going up to QuickBooks. That status of preliminary is for that period of time. Now, until I take and I mark it from preliminary and I change it to active, by changing it to active, I'm saying that now it is good to go. It can be synced. I could sync that right now if I wanted to. But say we don't for whatever reason, maybe we want to do it as a batch, but I'm going to go back, come over here, and let's say this time I want to sync everything, but I don't want to actually have to hit all the buttons. I'm just going to hit the sync all button. By running sync all, the dialogues that prompt us to see if we would like to do a current found set and so on. That may be options we would want to set if we were actually doing it from the layout, but we don't want to do that from a sync all. I'm going to go check my results and everything ran appropriately. And so now let's go back and check out invoices, and I can see that now all 3 of my invoices are synced, which is perfect. And I'm going to go check that out on QuickBooks Online. So let's come here to QuickBooks Online and we'll do a refresh. And we have 3 invoices, and you can see that 2 of them are open, and we have the other one marked as paid. Now, if I come here now and I say that, let's say I received payment for one of them for invoice 004. Now we'll just go ahead and do 2 since we do it in order. And we'll say it was cash, and we'll do a reference number, and we'll do that into our bank, and we'll put the amount received, and we'll save it. Great. All right, you can see that invoice 002 is now marked as paid, and now we are going to do another sync. Now, a couple things that are ignored. That one's marked as paid, so now that it's marked as paid, that will not go as part of our sync. We have two-way synchronization here. A push. Now, once a record is locked, it no longer does a push, it does a pull. And what we're getting back as part of our pull is we're getting back if there was a payment. And so let's go ahead and we'll do a sync all. And we'll just go ahead and run that from here. That's probably what you'll run most of the time. All right, let's go back to invoices. And let's go back to 002. And you can see now it is marked paid. And that's great. We have our payment date recorded. And that's wonderful. And that all came through. Our sales tax is accurate. All that's good to go. But that's how payments would be handled, as they'd be done on the QuickBooks side. And then they would be pulled down into FileMaker. And that pretty much wraps up the setup and the initial synchronization of your three main modules of products, customers, which would be accounts or contacts, and then invoices, and goes through a little bit of the interaction there of the logic kind of behind that.